We have, oh, I've been told to stop.
You can go now.
Okay. Hi, everybody. And welcome to another Biotensegrity Party, an all-volunteer production of the Stephen M. Levin Biotensegrity Archive. I'm Susan Lowell de Solorzano here in Washington, D.C. We have Graham Scarr in Nottingham. You want to give a wave, Graham?
Hello, hello.
And Chris Marita Clancy, who is in Deep Cove. You want to say hi, Chris?
Hi, everyone.
Steve Levin's with us today. He's in McLean. Look at you outside, Steve. Beautiful.
It's my sunroom, if we call it that.
Ah, it just looks outside. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And our special guest today is Maren Diehl, and she's an author, and she learned biotensegrity at the knee of Danielle Claude Martin, and really has a wonderful take on things. We will see if we can put a link to her book in the chat. I think most of you know it. Maren joined us a few months ago when we had a colloquy on biotensegrity and equine health, and we presented the keynote presentation, but she was unable that day to participate in a Q&A or a discussion afterwards. So we're going to reprise the presentation so that we can then have a nice discussion about it with Maren herself. Maren, do you want to do a toast for us?
Oh, a toast. Okay. Best to the Biotensegrity Archive and to success in spreading everything all over the world.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And I want to toast all the unsung therapists who do so much work and so much for so many people, but maybe are not as well recognized in the sort of more official, medical or research areas as they perhaps someday will be. So we're looking forward to more collaborations across those boundaries. Cheers. Okay, if we don't have anything else, well, let me just say we are going to have, I will probably announce it both now and at the end. The next tea party is going to be on the 17th of December 2021. We're going to be having just a social event, just a gathering for the kind of end of the year and holidays and such. But it's only going to be a Zoom event. So if you want to join us, make sure you go to biotensegrityarchive.org and get on the email list, because you'll need the email that will have the Zoom registration so you can join us that day. All right, are we ready for the presentation?
Do you want to do sponsors at the end then? Or
Yeah, we'll do sponsors at the end.
Okay.
So I think Mariana is going to position it.
Actually, Mariana's camera's off, so she's probably sharing to Facebook and such.
Okay, great.
So why don't...
I am here.
Okay, great.
Just a sec. We want the sound, right, for this? Sorry, I forgot to ask
Yes,
that
please.
before.
Yes.
Okay. So this should be... big. Hold on.
That's okay. While we're waiting.
This should be this and this. And
Perfect. Looks great.
Welcome everybody to our event about biotensegrity and horses. I'm Maren Diehl from Germany, horse trainer, horse riding instructor and in times of Corona, producing coaching videos and how a horse works videos. Since 2014, I'm researching biotensegrity and principles of biotensegrity in horses. In 2014, I first made contact with Steve Levin by email, and this was the beginning of a very long journey. In 2018 and 19, I lectured about horses and biotensegrity during the Biotensegrity Interest Group meeting in Belgium, in Ghent. And in 2016, my book about biotensegrity has been published in German, and 3 years later, in 2019, in English language too. Inspired by Steve Levin's statement that I am a true scientist, and by Susan Lowell de Solásano's compliment that I have the best understanding of biotensegrity she knows of, although I'm not quite sure about the reference group, I try to combine my knowledge about principles of biotensegrity with my experiences in horse training and martial arts. Because I'm not a native English speaker, I took this little video, so everything is right for you. This video is not about horse training or training methods or riding styles or therapies. It's just about biotensegrity. What I talk to you about is tensegrity models and tensegral principles. And I will talk about biotensegrity and the difference between biotensegrity and inanimate models. And I will show you the role the lumbosacral joint plays in the biotensegral structure of the horse. Let's start with the models. I hope that every one of you has a model at hand, because these models are very important for your understanding of tensegrity. These models show and let you feel the physics of tensegrity. They let you see and feel the reactions of tensegral structures, and you feel the force distribution in the structure throughout the whole model. And what you feel here, you can't learn by reading a book or a paper or by watching a video. It's really important to get a model. If you don't have one, and if you can't buy one, just build one. It's not that complicated, because this one is made of pens and some cord and some elastics, and it is not very strong, but it will do the trick to let you feel what it is about. What makes a proper model? A proper model, this one is an icosahedron with 6 sticks and some cord. The most important thing is that the sticks don't touch each other and that there is enough tension in the system to prevent the sticks from touching each other. This one looks good. I think when you made it here, you already know about tensegrity. So I will make this very short. Any energy impact is distributed throughout the whole model, and the forces are the same everywhere in the model. The sticks are compression elements and the cords are tension elements. And if you are really good at building models, you can build a tensegrity column, something like this, and very small and very strong. And if you did this, and there are people who have done this, you can replace every stick and every cord by such a tensegrity column, and this tensegrity column will act as its position in the model demands. So it is not made as a compression element, it's not made as a tension element, although you can tune them a little bit for their job. They just react to the job they get. Another point that is very important for horse training is that a tensegral structure doesn't have to be symmetric to be a tensegral structure. So this one has nearly no symmetry. It once had some, but it's not there any longer. And it's still a tensegrity model. And it works as a tensegrity model, although the asymmetry makes it stronger to the one direction and weaker to another direction. Tensegrity is not about sticks and cords. Tensegrity is about volume, it is about force distribution, it's about reaction, and it is very important about behavior. So what finally makes a tensegral structure is its behavior and its interaction with the environment. You can see such a model as the cube or the acting force in a free body diagram. But the structure itself doesn't follow these principles, it follows the principles of tensegrity. So don't mix up what happens in a tensegral structure with what does a tensegral structure do in a certain setting. Of course, this model doesn't represent a horse. It's not the model of a horse's body. But these models can show and let you feel the principles of tensegrity you will also find in horses. So if this one is not the body, and this is not, and these are not the body, what's the body like? And here it comes to biotensegrity and its difference to inanimate structures. The difference between tensegrity and biotensegrity is the bio, life. Because life is always acting and interacting, and life is very complex. Every biotensegral structure, every living being outscores any man-made machine not only by the number of parts, but by the number of actions, reactions, and interactions. So artificial intelligence wouldn't be able to solve problems the way a biotensegral structure does, because there is an immanent intelligence in biotensegral structures. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe created the term morphology, and it is Greek, and you could translate it as the wisdom of the structure. That would be one possible translation. So the wisdom of the structure enables a living being to make decisions in a complexity and speed a man-made machine couldn't. A living being, a biotensegrity structure, speeds up when the number of problems rises, and an artificial intelligence slows down when the number of problems rises. That's one big difference. The intentions of a living being are always to interact with the environment, to survive, to protect itself, and to do everything in the most energy efficient way. Okay, let's make it easy again. This is a 50-gram Tensegrity model, and I will show you how strong and loadable it is. So let's have a look at the video. This is our 50-gram model on a kitchen scale with a range up to 2.5 kilograms. A plate for a safe base for the flour packs. And number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4, and the model tries to jump away under the load, but I don't let it. And pack number 5. So we had 5,000 grams on a 50-gram model. And the model didn't change its shape permanently. It's the same as before. Would you believe that this works with a broken stick? It does. You see here that this stick is made of 2 sticks that are held together by compression and nothing else. This is the model from the video. So this model is loadable up to 5 kilograms even with a broken stick. I will show you once. So, what happened? What is it now? Has it lost its tensegrity? No. It is still a tensegrity model, but it is a broken tensegrity model that has lost most of its loadability and many of its functions, because true tensegrity model doesn't have open ends. But you can still load it. Load it in the same position as before. It collapses at a weight of a little bit more than 1 kilogram. Now let's go on with the position of the lumbar sacral joint in the tensegral structure of the horse's body. The lumbar sacral joint is the connection between the sacral bone and the spine. The spine has to distribute the propulsion coming from the hind. The spine has to act as one, so the whole horse can act as one and in one time. the sacral bone and the spine, arranged in a way that they are able to act as one compression element during the propulsion phase of the hind. They let go during the suspension phase for a wider range of motion, for changing gaits, for changing speed and direction. I usually explain positive and negative motion patterns based on the propulsion from the hind. If there is any propulsion, no matter how few, there are positive motion patterns, while backwards traction of the hind results in negative motion patterns as shown in the pictures. In positive motion patterns, the lumbosacral joint is engaged in a way that the sacral bone and the rest of the spine act as one tensegral column, as one compression element throughout the whole propulsion phase of the hind. In negative motion patterns, the lumbosacral joint is sort of open. It is disengaged and there is no force fit between the sacral bone and the lumbosacral spine. In that state, the lumbosacral joint can't distribute the forces from the hind. This is, in a nutshell, the result of my studies so far. But what does that mean in terms of biotensegrity? In positive motion pattern, the engaged lumbosacral joint lets the sacral bone and the rest of the spine act as one compression element. In the negative motion patterns, there are two parts now, and so there can happen different things. Viewed through the lens of biotensegral principles, there might be two compression elements touching each other. What would be wrong if we follow tensegral principles? The other possibility is that fascia adds a tension element and the two compression elements now distribute the forces in different directions. That affects, due to the key position of the lumbosacral joint in the horse's tensegral structure, nearly all other body parts of the horse and their positions and force directions. There is sort of a general phase change in the horse's body as soon as the tensegral column of the spine breaks up into two compression elements and one tension element. My thought was that we get a broken tensegrity model or a broken horse as soon as one compression element splits in two and the parts are functionally disconnected under load. The horse with the unengaged lumbosacral joint didn't lose its tensegrity, but it is just a broken biotensegral structure that has lost most of its functionality, loadability and resilience. To my opinion, we have to make a decision which horse we work with, which horse we train and treat. The broken one or the unbroken one. My experiences with the lumbosacral joint and its different states came first, and biotensegrity added the theoretical underpinning for my insights. But in the first place, it was my experience that led me there. We have the choice between two models of a horse that both can be explained by the principles of biotensegrity. There is not one biotensegral horse and a biomechanical horse. All horses can be explained by the principles of biotensegrity. As Susan says, biotensegrity offers the theoretical underpinning for why whatever works, and why whatever doesn't work. There are so many different horses from different breeds, from different riding styles, but their bodies follow the same principles of biotensegrity. But how does the body know these principles? That's why there are principles. They have always been there, waiting for someone to put them in words. So thanks to Steve Levin, who started this great project. For every horse, it makes a big difference whether it is allowed to act with engaged and integrated lumbosacral joint, or if it is sort of disarmed by an unengaged lumbosacral joint. Maybe it is easier to handle a horse that is not that strong, but to my opinion, that's not fair. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to learn about how biotensegrity informed your work with horses. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Okay,
Wow.
here we are.
You know, it's so interesting because I think I've seen this 6 times now, or 7, or I don't know how many. I learn every time, which makes me very happy. And there's just something about the way that you put things, Maren, that is, I don't know, it opens my eyes in a new direction. So for everyone who's out there, Maren's here to take questions or comments from those of you who have them. I am not somebody who works with horses, and in that way, I mean, I think they're wonderful, but we are open to whatever comments or questions you have. I am going to ask you to go to reactions, which is at the bottom of your Zoom frame, and raise up a hand if you have a question. However, if you're not able to make that work, you can also pop your question into the chat, or just pop into the chat, I would like to ask a question, and we'll get you to unmute and jump in. Maren, since we did, while we're waiting for that to happen, since we did the colloquy, and since you made this presentation, what's been going on in terms of any new thoughts, insights, projects, anything like that?
I mainly started my online projects, and I really made it to start Biotensegrity Pioneers with an online course for 8 persons in German. So that seems to take off now. And there are so many discussions going on that it's always, everything is always changing and becomes more clear somehow, even if there are things that I don't understand the first moment. It doesn't take too much time to find some sense in it, and that's very fascinating. It's a process that will never stop, but at least I don't get stuck at the moment.
That's great. As we go into the part of our time together when we're open for discussion and questions, if you would like to, you can, and thank you for reminding me, Mariana, you can turn on your video. And Steve, would you tell everybody about the screen behind you For those who don't know,
I'm muted here. The screen behind me, actually, it's a virtual screen, is a Buckminster Fuller Diamaxon map. And the normal flat maps that you see in books are distorted, and Greenland is much bigger than it is, and other countries in the middle are smaller than they are. And this diamoxin map is actually a icosahedron, and all the land masses are represented at their size, comparative sizes. So
hold
it's
on,
not
Steve,
distorted.
could somebody who has hosting ability maybe spotlight Steve so everybody can see it as big as possible?
Right. Yeah, and yeah, actually the signature is backwards, but that's signed by Buckminster Fuller, who signed it for me a few years ago when he was alive. So I have a signed diamoxin map. These are still available. You can get them through the Buckminster Fuller Institute. And they're fascinating. When you put them together, they're an icosahedron.
So you can see the little tabs and
Yeah,
stuff.
these
Yeah.
there are little tabs on these things that hook together. This is one on my wall. So
And for those of you who don't know, a map that we usually see of the world, and forgive me, Maren, for this diversion here, but it's so important.
Yeah.
The maps of the world that we typically see that are still ubiquitous, which is amazing to me, are these Mercator projection maps, which were great for, I guess, sailing across from Europe to the Americas a few hundred years ago, but which make Greenland look larger than Australia, which it is not, for example. So we are used to seeing our world visually represented with a lot of distortion. And Fuller was interested in communication and education and mathematical accuracy as much as anything else. So thank you, Steve.
well, glad I had it.
Steve, did you have anything, any comments on Maren's presentation before we open it up to the wider group?
Every time I listen to it, of course, I get more out of it. It's an amazing presentation of biotensegrity. I just love it. And, and as I said, as I've told her, she's a true scientist because she does these kitchen science experiments, which really give you an understanding of what's going on. So it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Great. I think we can go back to taking the spotlight off of Steve then. Thank you. So Maren, I know that you were talking about the importance of models, building a model, and you are, it seems, very often building new models and doing inventive things with them, like the stick. I want to make sure everybody understands what that was with the stick. It breaks so quickly. It's hard to see. Yeah, what she's done is she's taken one of the compression struts and kind of sawed it in half. And then she puts the tensegrity together, and the compressive forces from the cords on that compression strut keep that compression strut from breaking. And so everything looks fine, but there's something in terms of the integrity of that particular strut that's problematic. And when that thing breaks, you can see it's so quick. Even when you did slow-mo, you cannot see it. It's so fast.
Even if you slow-mo the slow-mo, you can't see it.
You still can't see it. These are systems under tension. And that tensionality through the system, I've been calling it recently a tension governed system creates a situation where when external forces is applied, it's distributed throughout and very, very, very quickly. And here's the inverse. When a force is interrupted within the system, the change to the whole system is everywhere very quickly. So if you look, you can see there's a little line in that compression strut. It's really two sticks, and they're not glued together. They're just not moving because of the compression. This also, to me, right, is a nice proof, before you break it, is a nice proof of there not being shear in the system.
That all forces are vertical in these sticks.
Exactly. That we're dealing with pushes that are, you know, in straight lines of push and pull. If there was any shear in that system, that strut would not be able to stay that way. It is under quite a bit of pressure. And when she releases it, you'll see. Okay, let's try.
Wait, before you release it, Maren.
Too late.
Late.
She can put it back together.
I can try.
I would love to see. I imagine if you change the tension in part of the tensional network, everything's going to shift around. I'd love just to see what happens. You know, if you just tighten up one of the tension cords.
Well, right. If there isn't, if she loosens things too much, if there isn't sufficient,
Not to loosen it.
No, it
yeah.
would.
But if
It would work with looser cords, but I can't put more tension on it because it is nearly
right.
There can't be more.
Okay, because I was just thinking if you increase the tension in one of the cables, that increased tension would redistribute through the hole, and it shouldn't change. I mean, the compression should be even tighter, right? Or not tighter, but increased.
Well,
Okay.
biologically, but this model is not made, Chris, such that those strings can adjust, right? In a biological system, there'd be instant everywhere adjustment throughout the system.
I'm just curious to see.
What I can do is that I can squeeze it here.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. It just matters when I touch one of the two sticks which belong together. When I come too close, they will explode. But when I
right, so
tighten it here,
yes,
nothing happens with that stick.
So effectively, when she squeezes strings together, it's got the same effect as shortening them.
Well, and
yes, it's the same effect. And I think what is important to know is that it can only work when the two sticks have a proper 90-degree cut. It wouldn't work in another way because
they would slip.
The forces act vertical.
Yes.
And so they would push the sticks in different directions.
Yeah, that's great.
So we can't say it's someone asked weeks ago, what about a broken bone? And you can't fix a broken bone by this sort of tension when the breaking is not 90-degree to the forces. That's why you can't say it's the same in horses or dogs or humans, But what is the same? I think that's an important point that was not very clear in the video, that you can take these sticks away and use Tensegrity towers instead.
Yes.
Yes.
And if you have a Tensegrity tower, like the spine,
Mm.
you can cut the tension elements, and then you have the same effect that you have two Tensegrity towers. So the lumbosacral spine and the lumbar spine and the sacral bone.
Mhm.
Right.
So in a living being, it is possible to create in motion, to create Tensegrity towers and to I don't know the word, to make single parts and connect them again to be one Tensegrity tower that takes the full load.
Are you saying that the two sticks that make up the one that easily breaks,
Mhm.
if those were each tensegrity masts, and then they were separated the same way?
And you could cut one tension element, and then you would have two still working
Masts,
Tensegrity towers
yes.
when
And
the
so
when
then
the,
you're
when the cords are fixed and don't slide.
Right, right. And so then you would just need to restore that system.
Yeah. So we have the same in the foreleg of the horse, which is a Tensegrity tower in landing, and but the horse doesn't walk with a stick. It can bend the leg. So this is not one Tensegrity tower, it is just a Tensegrity tower under load. And that's what makes the movement of the horse.
What makes the movement is this loading and unloading?
It's loading and unloading to answer the ground reaction force, building one Tensegrity tower and then moving this tower in the suspension phase
Mhm.
and creating a Tensegrity tower again for the next step, for the next ground contact.
Okay, so at the lumbar sacral joint, you're talking about making sure there's proper integration so that and balance of forces through that system where the joint is, so that the forces can be moved through the system and distributed throughout the whole body and not stuck somewhere along the way. Which would cause
because if you make two parts of this Tensegrity tower of the spine, including the sacral bone, if you have two Tensegrity towers as compression elements, then they have different directions, and that doesn't work. That would be shear. So there has to be a tension element in between, and even if there is a tension element, the directions in which the parts act are completely different than with a closed lumbosacral joint and one Tensegrity tower.
Great. So the system has to be sort of integrated and unified in order to distribute forces.
Yeah.
And if we have a sort of undue or less than optimal configuration internally, that distribution of forces can be impaired.
Mhm.
Steve, we mentioned broken bones. Would you mind talking about, since we conveniently have an orthopedic surgeon with us, and maybe we can spotlight Steve for a second, because the other thing, Steve, is I remember you talking to me about casts and the method that they used to use for, or teach for healing, for repairing the broken bones, where they would build tension and forces into the system with the shape of the cast to promote the healing.
Right. Well, I think what we've been talking about is nesting of tensegrities, where one tensegrity nests in another and then they integrate within another, but sometimes they sort of separate off so that you can move a limb while the rest of the tensegrity is stable. You always need a stable part and a moving part. So it's really a nesting of the tensegrities, and at some point you then stiffen the joint. In a broken bone, the first thing that happens with a bone that's broken is that it shortens and overlaps each other. So you see that the compression in that bone is created by the muscle tension pulling the bone together, compressing it, not pulling apart as you envision it. So you can actually see it in a broken bone. Bones that are not pathologic fractures break in a spiral. There's always a spiral. When you set a bone as a surgeon, well, one of the older methods, and they don't use much anymore because it's too expensive to keep people in hospitals, was to put people in traction and put pins in the bone and separate them so they will line up, and then there's enough compression there that bone would form, because what forms the bone is the compression. All right. When you do it with a cast, in the old days we used to use plaster of Paris, which was, the plastic like that you set on walls and things, and you'd actually mold the cast in a 3-point configuration. Like if you hold a rigid bar, you can use a 3-point to keep it solid. 2 points doesn't do it, 3 points makes it solid. And so use these 3-point configuration to stabilize the fracture. And then it's the compression again that heals it. So I think people are held, in my opinion, people are in casts far too long, because all you want to do is get the bone to develop what is known as a callus, which is sort of fibrous tissue that bind that bone together, and then you actually want a compression on it. So for years we kept people from walking on broken bones. Some techniques now, you start pounding that bone as soon as possible to get to stimulate its healing. So from the orthopedic perspective, they've done things upside down and backwards. Did I help?
Thank you.
You're muted.
Susan, you're muted.
Sorry. I do that to shut myself up sometimes.
Yeah.
If we can take the spotlight off of Steve now.
Yes.
I know we've got, thank you, Steve. Any other questions or comments? I don't see any hands up or anything in the chat. So, okay. Oh, Mariana's got one. Okay, Mariana, go ahead.
I broke my my tensegrity with the
Now we have to spotlight Mariana because she's going to show us her model.
yeah, just as Maren was talking, I said, okay, let me try that. Okay, and then because I don't have the tools here, I just use this to cut the sprouts. There's no clean cut. It doesn't work. Like I can feel that place where it's in perfect balance, but then it goes, right? And then what I noticed when I broke it first, that because these are cables, right? These are pipes, pipe cleaners that I can adjust. So I was playing with how tense do they need to be, and the tenser they are, the easier is to keep this in balance. And then my next thought was, what if I mean, can they take the compressional element? Because there's also there's teeth, right? There's not they have wires in it, and I think they do at one point. They hold. So it's interesting. Like, but again, because there's no clean cut, it doesn't stay. I guess if there was just straight cut, they will easily stay there. But I'm gonna just repeat what Maren says at the beginning. You have to have it in your hand to understand it. Like you have to. There's no other way to get this knowledge but from feeling it. So yeah, that's it. Just
So
sharing.
Fighting.
Yeah, so make at least one model if you haven't made one.
Yeah.
But those of us who are really into it, we end up making
Many.
so many models, and they're not only tensegrity models. We end up making icosahedrons from magnetic balls, and all kinds of tetrahedrons, octahedrons. We end up making jitterbugs. We end up making all kinds of things. So every time I make any kind of model, I learn something. And some of you know that recently I've been playing with these outside and making the geometric shapes, with 4-foot long bamboo sticks. And just, in trying to put those together, it's so interesting how things will just swing around. It becomes very quiet once it's made. But in the process, something can go flying, swinging this way or that, because when you're doing it on a large scale, everything's kind of magnified. So finding stable shapes, finding stability, feeling stability is a really wonderful process to go through. And that's just one of many things you learn making models. Maren, were you going to say something? We can take Marianne off of spotlight, whoever's doing it. I'm sorry.
Yes, I think what you said, that you really have to struggle to bring the pieces together, and suddenly when it's done, everything is easy and in place and wonderful. And as soon as these two are, I don't trust it, like this, and you try to bring them together again, it's really, you really have to struggle, because every part wants to go elsewhere, and they don't, in between you think, okay, it should work, but it doesn't feel as if it could ever work. And suddenly it's the right direction and the right contact, and then it's the functional. Yes, that was really quick. It's fixed again, and it looks so easy and perfect.
Right. And we have this experience so often when we're making our models, where we feel like, I don't know if this is going to work, and it's lobbing around, and then all of a sudden, boom, there it is. So it's almost physically surprising.
Yeah.
So yeah, just another reason to make models.
I can show another picture
Great.
or two. No, that was wrong. I have to share screen. Hello. Da. So these first directions you find in horses with an open lumbosacral joint. So that is what I explained as sort of phase change in the whole horse, that every part of the horse seems to change the direction of forces. As soon as the lumbosacral joint closes and we have one tensegrity tower, the neck moves in the other direction, the ground support is completely different, and the seat of the rider is always also completely different. I can try to, it works, great. So here you have the other way around. When the lumbosacral joint is closed, you have that healthy
And we don't see
spine.
the next picture.
Huh?
We still see the original picture that you put up.
This one? Okay. Dann machen wir das nochmal neu. Zack. Nein, das ist falsch. Ich krieg das hin. Zack. Jetzt. So
Yes.
now you see the other one, right?
Yes.
Okay. Pity that I can't switch it in this by sharing screen. So there the force directions are completely different than in the other picture. And that even makes a big difference how the horse carries the rider and how the rider is able to sit on the horse.
Well, it's the difference between when you were loading the bags of flour on the intact tensegrity
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and or on a broken one.
Yeah. And
Okay.
yeah, and
Craig, do you want to unmute? It's great to see you. It's been a while. Oh, and Celeste has her hand up as well. So Craig's been putting things in the chat.
Craig is actually not here. He's on YouTube. I added it into the chat for him.
Okay, great. Okay, that's great. Well, thank you, Craig. It's always great to hear from you. And yeah, that's exactly what Maren was saying, that if that cut isn't exactly 90 degrees, that it won't hold. That's what Mariana was saying as well. Celeste, I think you might know that your camera is not currently on, but you're welcome to just jump in and talk if you want to, without turning camera on. If you don't want to turn camera on, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I have been, as Maren I think knows from emails we had way back, I have been struggling to wrap my brain around this concept she's presenting. And where I find myself running into a problem is if tensegrity is truly, as Stephen says, from the molecular level out, if everything is a tensegrity, then aren't there ways in which a living organism adapts, compensates, adjusts? I find it a little difficult wrapping my brain around the spinal cord as one tension element, because to me is, as I run into it in my body work, it is a moving part, an immensely moving part. And I mean, Maren is a brilliant woman and she's got an amazing concept going here. And I'm trying to wrap my brain around where she's coming from.
So maybe Celeste, can you clarify your question?
I think I found a point to
Okay.
answer.
Yeah.
Because you can't see the spine. The spine isn't the same during the different phases of motion.
Yeah.
So there is one moment when the propulsion has to be distributed through the horse. That's the moment when the spine has to be very stable and very strong. And when this phase is finished, then the spine is able to move and to change position and to change form until the next moment of propulsion. Then it has to be stable again. And that's the reason why I think it is important to ride a horse in a way that it changes its form and direction during the suspension phase and not during the stance phases.
Okay. Okay. But to me also, it goes back to the thing of with fascia and the fascial lines. The old anatomy had the skeleton as the frame, and we patched muscles onto it, like people build a sculpture, okay? And with the whole fascial concept and the whole fascial trains, they are the stabilizing. The skeleton is nothing. The skeleton is held within the fascia and by the fascial trains. And this is, I guess, and I find this so effective, let's put it this way, in helping a horse in body work. Now, that doesn't mean I don't try and help the rider also when they are open to it, because yeah, we're not, the horses aren't the problem, we're the problem. End of story, 100%. But I have made a complete about face from the skeleton as the framework.
Can I jump in with something which I hope doesn't make things worse, but in the effort to, I don't know, illustrate something. So Maren was talking about how biology is going to outdo the model every time in terms of its ability to make all kinds of changes and the number of parts and aspects. And Steve talked about how it's all nested systems, and we understand it that way. Depending on what's needed, depending on what I want to do. So in terms of, like, if I'm doing Tai Chi and I'm relaxed, somebody can push on my fingertip and they can put their whole body weight there. And this can be relaxed, but it can be integrated and integrated down through my feet so that there isn't undue pressure even on a tiny knuckle in a finger or in the wrist joint. Okay. However, if I want, I can have my wrist do this. So depending on what I need, and what I want and what I want to do and get accomplished. If I'm whipping eggs, you know, I want to be able to do this. If I'm, you know, doing something where I'm pushing myself up from the ground or whatever, I don't want it to go floppy like that. So depending on what we need and what we want, we change our structure in terms of what's managing what and how, and we can do it on the fly. And I don't think of there being any part of my system that's not participating in that. I don't think of this as being something that is happening with this and not with that. It's always only with everything.
Yeah.
Now that's more a Tai Chi perspective, but
Yes, I think it wouldn't work without bones. And the fascia is creating
it wouldn't work the same way without bones. I mean, think of an elephant's trunk, which has no bones, and they pick up logs and such. So the tension and compression configurations throughout the system. We have bones that will store that compressed energy like a loaded spring, so that we can use them when we want. Sorry, go ahead, Maren.
No, yeah, maybe I said it wrong. We have bones and we can make use of these bones, but these bones are not everything. And we have fascia and we can make use of fascia, but our fascia alone also is not everything. So what you said, Susan, everything belongs together. And I don't think and feel bones. It's what I see and feel is the structure of a tensegrity tower, and not the vertebrae and the sacral bone. That's just to visualize it for others, but the feeling is the feeling of tensegrity towers.
And of course, the bone is also part of the fascia. Celeste, did you want to jump back in?
Well, one thing is, Han, what you were saying about Tai Chi is why I believe Tai Chi is the perfect counterbalance for every blessed rider on earth. Tai Chi would make them better riders without a doubt. Yeah, but I think it's maybe hard to put into words, because the deeper I go into studying the fascia and working with it, and now I have this fabulous book from the 3 Danish vets on equine fascia. It is finally published.
Oh, great.
Oh, it is amazing. It's finally here. It's the more I become immersed in the fascia, the bones are fascia. They're just fascia with an abundance of calcium. If you take a bone and dissolve and stick it in vinegar, and you dissolve out the calcium, you're going to bend it. It's fascia.
Yeah, and for anyone who has my book, Steve's essay on bone is fascia is right at the beginning. Yeah.
You know, so it's
what's the name of that book, Celeste? I'll put a link to it.
Okay, it is. Let me see if I turn this on. Can I turn my video on? I'll show you a picture. Let's see if this will turn it on.
Or just read me the title if you can.
Yeah, it's Equine Myofascial Kinetic Lines.
Okay, great.
And it's by Rick Schultz, Tove Du, and Vibeke Elbrand, 3 Danish veterinarians who have been working on this for decades, ever since Tom Myers published the first edition of Anatomy Trains. They
Yeah.
took it as their springboard. Yeah, they've been dissecting and researching and documenting this for decades, and it's finally here. It's amazing.
Let's see, I'm not getting it in my. Okay, give me the.
It's equine.
That's the title again. I'm so sorry.
No, it's a fine, hon. Equine.
Yeah.
Myofascial kinetic lines.
Okay, great. While I'm looking that up,
That's from Vibeke Elbrand.
Yes.
And we
Yes.
had her presentation. Rico Schulz gave the presentation at the colloquy. That's
great.
the same.
yeah,
You
Rick
have
did
to,
great.
the only, Susan, the only place you can order it is their website, fasciallines.com.
Okay.
It's
I'm
from the publisher.
Well, I'm looking that up because we're getting close on time. Camilla, can you unmute and jump in and talk a little about what your thoughts and insights were?
Hello. Well, I tried to formulate it in what I have written. But I'm exploring the experiment you did with the bags of flour and the tensegrity structure. When should I? Okay.
There you go.
I have dinner here and I'm like playing with the with the bigger force, but I don't have a proper one with me here. And I was just thinking how brilliant it is, how visible it is that when you apply too much of the force for the system and it's not completely in I don't know if I'm going to name it right, but it's not completely dissipating it properly. It wants to go away. It wants to jump away. And I think it's such a great example when you work with animals or humans. I'm a physical therapist, that we are many times pushing so hard. We think something's like right and we're trying to push it there. And I experienced this feeling that you just somehow, if you give it a try and you step back and you apply less force, the system tells you if you're doing it right or wrong. And it doesn't want to jump away. And so I think this is a great guidance how when you listen to it properly and have the nice dialogue with whatever you're trying to do with some living organism, you can be guided to what you should do or what's wanted from you to be done. Well, if someone doesn't understand me properly, I formulated it maybe better with words, and sometimes I get lost.
I think you put it really nicely, and I come back to the model all the time. What about you, Maren?
I wanted to say that it's a very interesting aspect of tensegrity models, that when you handle them slightly, you can move them very easily at the first some millimeters. And if you press harder, put more load on them, they become very strong and rigid. And I think we need both the ability to carry a load and the ability to be flexible and don't
The ability
don't stick in the strength. So we need the motion and the ability of the body to be loadable at that moment when it has to be loadable, and to be flexible in between.
So
And
this reminds me of Steve's earlobe, exercise he has people do, right? So your earlobe is readily movable, right? And you start to tug it and it just comes right with you. It just goes, but then all of a sudden it's not going any further, and you can keep tugging, but it reaches that edge and or that end of movement, and it does so in a nonlinear way and in a not rigid way. A lot of us as part of a lot of us are part of Embodied Biotensegrity that Chris and Gwen have a platform for education for those wanting to learn about biotensegrity. I highly recommend it. And the book for book club this month, it wasn't a book, it was to rewatch Ed Stiles' presentation at the Biotensegrity Party just about a year ago, an osteopathic perspective. And it's an incredible, very densely packed presentation. Ed's one of the people who's been applying concepts from biotensegrity to his medical work for decades and decades, and doing great research based on it. And one of the things he talked about, he's an osteopath, when he's palpating and when he's trying to determine when there's a problem, the problem will manifest because not only will there be less movement, but when the movement stops, it's a hard edge stop. It's not that soft landing like we have with our earlobe. So I think it's really interesting how what you're feeling in the model, right? That when we touch it lightly, it's a ready oscillator, right? It's just boom. And if you've got a tower, a Tensegrity tower or mast, and you just touch it a little bit, it just goes. There's a lot of vibrational energy that can be transmitted throughout the whole thing. But then when you go to push or pull on it, it will, in a nonlinear way, reach its limit. And that limit that's really a strong limit. And as Maren said, I agree, we need both. Celeste, another comment? I see your hand. I don't know if it's up from before or up again. Maybe it's up from before. We've got just a couple of more minutes. So I think we can probably take maybe one more comment or question if anyone has one.
I'm sorry, I was muted, Susan, and I didn't know.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
It was just on Camilla's thing. She used the word dialogue, and I think that's very apropos. I often use the word conversation. I'm not doing something to this animal. We are having a conversation with each other.
So Celeste, for those who don't know who are here, would you say you're an equine massage therapist? Is that
Yes.
how you? Yes.
Yes. Yes. You know, and as far as the slow and the hard of doing it, the old thing that of having cornstarch in a bowl of water. You put your hand in and you ever so slowly and gently, you can slide right through it. You push hard, it is going to stop you dead. And that's exactly what the body does. Exactly. I had my apprentices do it for practice. Yeah, I think Camilla was right on with that.
Yeah, that nonlinear soft matter. Exactly. Yeah. Great. Maren, thank you so much for, and Celeste, thanks for that. And thanks for letting us know the book was out. I didn't realize that. We did put it in the chat for anyone who's interested. We put it in the link.
I've been pestering them for 5 years. It's finally here.
Maren, any final words before we go to our closing?
I think it was a very interesting thing to rewatch and discuss that video again. And I think you are right. We could repeat it again and again, and always find new points or have new ideas, and it just doesn't stop.
Yes. Thank you so much, Maren. Okay, everybody, if you want to turn on your videos, you can. We're gonna do a closing toast. And we will say that Chris is gonna tell us about the sponsors. And I want to remind everyone that December 17, 2021 is our next tea party. It's going to be a social gathering, just a end of year holiday social. However, it's not going to be live to Zoom. If you want to join us, I mean, it's not going to be live to YouTube, I should say. It is only going to be on Zoom. So if you want to join us, make sure you're on the email list for the Biotensegrity Archive, which can be found at biotensegrityarchive.org. Chris?
Thanks, Susan. And thank you, Maren, for your presentation. It's great to see you again for your brilliance in model making and the sharing that you do. It's fantastic. I've got lots to think about around phase changes. And I'm just going to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Biotensegrity Tea Party is a production of the Stephen M. Levin Biotensegrity Archive. And
I just want to tell you there's a completed earth, buttons of full earth behind me now.
Oh, great. Can we spotlight Steve again for that?
sure. Are you going to do that, Mariana, or do you want me to? You will. Okay, great.
There it is, assembled and put together. The world as it should be.
Thank you, Steve. That's awesome. It's funny, it didn't spotlight on my screen, but let's hope it went up full on YouTube. Okay, so and a big thanks to our sponsors. We have Handspring Publishing, and they've been on board since the very beginning of the tea parties here. There's a coupon code in the chat on Zoom for you. And we'll have all the coupon codes put in the chat on Zoom. I'm not sure. I think you need to be in attendance to get some of them. Thank you, Gwen. Artifact Pro, and they make amazing Tensegrity structures. You can see them in some of our tea parties, as you can also see the structures from Pretensed, and they also have some coupon codes for you, and those will be in the chat. The Fascia Hub, they've got an event here coming up with Karen Kirkness. She's got a new book out. It's fabulous. And I think Jan will probably put the link for that in the chat because we don't have it handy, Jan. And finally, Embodied Biotensegrity. That's the platform that Gwen and I run. And we've got a coupon code for 15% off the Trailblazers membership. And we would love to see you there. Okay, back to you, Susan.
Great. Maren, thank you for all your work. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your insights. And yeah, for those of you who are interested in seeing quadruped tensegrity models, do check out Artifact Pro because Fur has some amazing ones. You can see the doggy wagging its tail and all of that. And so you can begin to get an idea of these tensegrities working together as a system. Anyway, thank you, Maren. Thank you for all the volunteers, Mariana, Gwen. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Graham, my co-executive producers. Thank you, Steve, for getting us started here. And thanks to all of you for being here today. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody.